We're going to finish up Megillat Ruth today, and we're by looking at the character of Boaz and by looking at the whole idea of what is a goel and what is geulah and how does that all come together. I'm going to close this door. Sorry, I'm going out of range, Mr. Camera. Because the bell's going to ring, hallways will get noisy and all that kind of stuff. Okay. So, where we left off, we have met Naomi, we have met Ruth, we have talked about the concepts of like the kind of a national identity of Bnei Israel's being from the lineage of Abraham, which is all about chesed, and Moab, which is about selfishness, and obviously how these two can't coexist, and we put it into modern terms of, person comes back into a very well-established community and is not welcomed publicly into the community, which sets a tone for how that person is treated. Nevertheless, Boaz as an individual treats Ruth very well. He, kind of on a one-to-one private basis in his field, in his home, in his place of business, right? Gives her a job, makes sure that the people, we talked about the kind of the Glad Express metaphor, right? The owner of Glad Express gives her a job, tells all the employees, you may not harass her, you may not make any negative statements about her, she's here to earn an honest living and is allowed to earn an honest living. Hi, you found us. Sorry for all the confusion. Okay. Nevertheless, the owner of Glad Express is not putting an ad in any shul bulletin saying, oh, we want to welcome into the community, Naomi and her daughter-in-law Ruth, and welcome back, and we're so glad you came back. And so there's a little bit of a mixed message. Also, you have to remember that in this case, Glad Express is not in the heart of Teaneck, but Glad Express is kind of, way up in Ramsey. Right? This is the outskirts of town. This is not in the middle of town. This is out in Yenim. It's a little establishment out in Yenim in the field. So I want to refer you now to Perek Gimel, okay, which is where things start to get a little bit interesting. So I want to introduce you to the idea, the halachic concept of what is a goel. A goel is a redeemer, okay? But I'm not talking about the kind of redeemer that we talk about in davening, like Goel Yisrael. I'm not talking about God, I'm not talking about Mashiach. This is a halachic and basically fundamental economic concept. In Judaism, the economics are primarily in the hands of men. However, that being said, men have a halachic responsibility to appropriately take care of the women in their family and the less fortunate in their community. Okay? That is basically what a ketubah is. The ketubah is a contract about what happens, who is responsible to take care of this woman in the event that something should happen to her husband, in the event that they should get divorced. Okay? The idea of a goel is not just about the economics between men and women, but it's the economics between those who have more and those who don't. In the sense that in Judaism, when Bnei Israel went into Eretz Israel, every family was accorded a plot of land. Okay? And as we know from American history and the history of the Depression and the depression or recession that we went through recently and the cyclical recessions, maintaining land is not cheap. Okay? You have to farm the land, you have to till the land, you have to pay the workers, you have to own things where you can store your crops and your produce, and you have to pay to transport. We don't think about the economics of farming because we live in an urban and suburban area. The economics of farming become as salient when you're outside of an urban area as the economics of Wall Street are to us, or the economics of the auto industry is to the city of Detroit. And the halacha is as follows. Every person gets a piece of land. Every person inherits from their family that piece of land. every person is required to maintain that piece of land. And if they do not have the economic means to maintain their personal piece of land, their family members, their uncles, their brothers, their cousins are required halachically to take over that land or facilitate that person to maintain their land. That is the concept of a go'el. Somebody who literally redeems you from your poverty, buys up your piece of land until either the Shemitah or the Yovel, and then it goes back to you. Okay? I was in Israel a number of years ago. Rabbi Benny Lau, not the chief rabbi of Israel, but Rabbi Benny Lau, who's a big force now in the Zohar movement, gave a shiur on Shemitah basically as a form of social justice. And it's a very interesting kind of an idea that as much as Judaism to some degree is a theocracy and a monarchy, it actually is, at its core, there are a lot of social justice and socialist type of concepts. The idea that after a certain piece of time, the scales get evened again. And the other thing is that, yes, certain people are rich and certain people are poor, but the rich have a halachic d'oraita responsibility to take care of the people who have less money. In other words, it's not a sign that God hates you. The Torah even says straight out, there will never be a time when poor people don't exist. It's just, it is a reality. And the Mefarshim talk about that. So Boaz is not one of Naomi's go'alim. Okay? If we recall, there were 4 brothers. Elimelech was one of them. Elimelech was one of them. Naomi's father was one of them. Boaz's father was one of them. And then there's this 4th brother who we're going to meet today, whose name is Ploni Almoni. And as a result, Naomi, right, who has no sons, has no husband, has one uncle and one male first cousin. And that uncle and that male first cousin are responsible to take care of her. That includes her land, and then by extension, it includes any living relatives. In this case, the living relative is Ruth. So we are now at the end of the harvest period in Perek Gimel. And Naomi has been kind of waiting patiently, which is a family joke in my family, but never mind. We're not good at waiting patiently. That's why it's a joke. So we're now at the beginning of Perek Gimel, and Naomi is astute, as the women in Tanakh very often are, and she realizes that it is the end of the harvest, and nothing has happened. So there's this fascinating conversation between Naomi and Ruth at the beginning of Perek Gimel, so I refer you to this. And she says as follows. So she says, BT. First of all, she calls her now, she's my daughter. It's not my daughter-in-law, it's not the Moabiyah. Things have changed in the course of one harvest system. Halo avakesh lach manoah. Do I not want for you rest? Okay? Whereas in Perek Aleph, Naomi's idea of finding rest for her daughters-in-law was sending them back home so that they're not her problem anymore. She's made a 180-degree turn at this point. 180-degree turn and saying, okay, this is now my responsibility. So Asher Yitav Lach. So here's what she's recommending. Ve'ata halo Boaz modatanu, Asher hayita et narotav, hine hu zoreh et goren hasaorim. Halayla. So now we have this scene here, R-rated movie scene, okay? And this is what she recommends. V'rachatzt v'sacht v'samt simlotayich alayich. You should wash. You should anoint yourself with oils or perfumes and put on your dress, meaning your special Yom Tov dress or Shabbat dress. V'yaradet hagoren. Go down to the threshing field. Al tivadi, don't let yourself be known to anybody. Okay, and then when he's done eating and drinking and he comes to sleep there to guard the field, and that you should lie down next to him. Sam ubat v'galit margalotav, and you should reveal and the pshat which you is very common. You shall reveal his legs. The less pshat is you should reveal his pearls. And yes, that is what it means. And you should lie down next to him. V'hu yagid lach et asher ta'asi. If you look at these psukim, a couple of things come out. Number one, you notice a whole bunch of what are called kriyuk tiv. And if you look at the kriyuk tiv, there is basically a conflation now, where Naomi and Ruth become as one person. Whereas in Perek Aleph, Naomi was separate, Ruth was separate, to the extent that Naomi tries to push Ruth away. And it is Ruth that clings to Naomi. It's now effectively turned itself around, and Naomi is identifying so strongly with Ruth that the I form and the you form become interchangeable. To the extent where Ruth says back to Naomi, Kol asher tomri elai, and the word elai is completely missing. You only see the nikudot. Everything that you see, you tell me, I will do. Ruth basically at this point says, I am completely submitting myself to you. Because what Naomi is effectively asking Ruth to do is to be what she is reputed to be. Right? Go down at night, get dressed up, put on, we've got this whole Tamar scenario all over again. I mean, it's pretty clear what the implications are. So she goes through with this, and it's dark, and she lies down, and Boaz comes, and he's kind of, says he's happy, meaning he's slightly drunk, and he lies down, and then we have, once again, we have a moment of truth. And I refer you to, I think it's Pasuk Zayin, okay? So she lies down, and she says, Vatagel Margalota, and she reveals either his legs or his pearls. And the idea being here that either way, what she is revealing has very definite sexual and marital implications, okay? If it's his pearls, clearly. But even if it's his legs, we have to kind of remember that the whole idea of legs and feet and establishing yourself, and the whole concept of when a man decides that he is not willing to do yibum, you have this whole ceremony with the shoe and taking off the shoe and spitting the shoe. So the idea of shoes and feet, and the idea of what you wear on your feet being a reflection of who you are, and Hashem saying to Moshe, take off your shoes, and we don't wear leather shoes on Yom Kippur because wearing shoes is a symbol of kingship, of melucha. So you can read it either way, but either way, Ruth is very clearly saying to Boaz, okay, you have a responsibility here. And he wakes up, we're in Pasuk Chet, okay? Vayehi b'chatzi halayla, yes, Shmuel is definitely making a reference here. It was at midnight, or in the middle of the night. Vayecharad ha'ish, and he starts shaking. Vayilafet, I love that term. It means he's like literally feeling around. Vehine, surprise! Isha shochevet margalota. There's a woman lying somewhere around there, okay? And again, here's this moment of truth. He's Boaz. I guarantee he had a weapon next to him, because a man is not going to be sleeping by himself in his barn with his entire harvest crop unarmed. Like, that would just be unthinkable. So here he is, he wakes up in the middle of the night, he realizes there's somebody there. It tells you also why Naomi told her to wear perfume, because he's able to identify by scent that this is a woman and not a man. Not sure which is scarier to find in a barn next to you in the middle of the night, lying at or across your feet, a man or a woman, and he clearly knows it's a woman because he says, mi'at. Who are you? You know, are you here to seduce me? Have I slept with you? Have, you know, did you put something in my drink? Did I put something in your drink? Who are you and how did you get here, basically? And so she's, you know, says, Vatomer mi'at, Vatomer anochi, and that word anochi, which is a whole different word, the word anochi as opposed to ani is a term of not only identification, you know, that's ani, but it's a term of openness, because from the word kaf, kaf is a palm. Anochi means I am, it's not just I am, but I am and I'm opening myself to you. It's initiating an intimacy, a relationship. That's why it's Anochi Hashem Elokecha, not Ani Hashem Elokecha. So she says, Anochi, I, who I'm opening myself, I am Rut Amatecha, Ufarasta Kenafecha Al Matecha Ki Goel Ata. And the allusion here to Matan Torah is unmistakable. Whether she actually said these words, whether Shmuel put these words in her mouth, when she says Anochi, right, and then she says Ufarasta Kenafecha, you should spread your wings, when Hashem says in Perek Yutet, right, that I'm going to carry them, I'm going to protect them, and then she says Ki Goel Ata. And there's a double entendre here, the double entendre meaning you are the redeemer in the big sense, but on a very practical sense, you have a halachic responsibility to me. Now let's remember, who is Boaz? Boaz is the head of his tribe. He's the head of the head tribe, Yehuda, and according to the Gemara, he's Iftzan, so he's the shofet. So not only is he a rich man, he's a man of purpose, he's a man of power, he's a man of influence, and he's not just a man of influence over his own family and over his own tribe, but in fact over the entire people. Okay, so now we're not just talking about your local bigwig, we're not just talking about your local rabbi, we're talking about Lord Jonathan Sacks here. Okay? This is the representative of Jews in that particular country as a whole. So whatever comes out of his mouth next is going to make an incredible impact, not only on Ruth, but on history. And this is the idea of what a goel is. A goel is not just somebody who saves you for the moment. A goel is somebody who redeems you in that sense. He buys you back. He gives you a future, whether it's an economic future or in the sense of, the bigger sense of the goel, a national future, a personal future, right? We talk about the Geula. We don't even really think about what we're saying, right? When we're saying the Geula, we think about it as, you know, the Geula means, you know, happy days are here again. But what the Geula, when we talk about that concept means, it means that we are achieving a freedom that would have been lost or that was lost. And that is a very deep psychological and spiritual kind of thing, as well as an economic thing. Okay? And we are, I think, at this point as a community, all too familiar with the psychological ramifications of economic hardship, and that, you know, it's very common when people lose their jobs, right? They get depressed. They don't want to talk to anybody. It's not just about losing your income. You feel you've lost your identity, you've lost your pride, you've lost your independence, you've lost your motivation. It's a very, very, very debilitating kind of situation. And that is, so when a goel comes along, he's not just giving you money, he's giving you your life back. So Ruth is now saying, my life, my future, my identity, my acceptance in this community, as well as Naomi's, is in your hand.
I have a question.
Yes.
So he had an obligation of yibum towards her?
Yes.
Because Is he the closest
So
living?
this is what's about to come out.
Yeah.
He
He's
is
not- he's
one of
not
the
a brother,
two,
he's
and he
not a
says,
brother.
I'm not the closest
Right.
one.
Oh,
Okay, but yes,
right, plenty of money.
he's one of the two that has an immediate obligation, and he knew darn well he had that
Like
obligation.
Yibam is not just a brother of your dead
Correct.
husband.
Correct.
Just
The
a brother.
whole idea of the Goel or of the Yibum, and again this goes back to Yehuda. So Yibum, and there's an entire Masechet of Yevamot. By the way, don't ever try to learn it without a pen and paper, or even better, a spreadsheet. Take it from somebody who tried to learn it on Shabbat. It's like this web of responsibility goes very, very far out. In other words, it's not just your husband's brother. It's your husband's brother's son. It's the grandfather. It goes basically 2 degrees in all directions. Okay? It might even apply to a husband's half-brother through a mother, not even through a father. Okay? This is a very, very wide web of financial responsibility. So we have this moment, just like with Yehuda, there's a moment of truth. Vayomer, and he says, Brucha at laHashem biti, hitav chasdecha acharon min harishon, lebilti lechet acharei habachurim, kidal v'indal im ashir. You're not going after youth, you're not going after something that's superficial, okay? Whether rich or poor, v'ata biti al tirai, kol asher tomri e'eselach. Tables are now turned. Whereas Ruth said to her mother, everything that you tell me, I will do. He is saying, everything that you tell me, everything that you say, I will do. Ki yodea kol shar ami ki eshet chayo at. Okay, so here we have a literary turn. At the beginning, Boaz is called the Gibor Chayil. Right? Somebody who's a Gibor Chayil is supposed to be somebody of personal integrity. We know this from Yitro, again, in Perek Shemot, Perek Yudchet, that somebody of Chayil is somebody of moral stature, not just somebody of economic stature. And the way I understand what's going on here is Boaz is saying, basically, I was supposed to be the Chayil, and I wasn't. This is his way of saying, Tzadka mimeni. I was the Chayil, you are the Eshet Chayil. You know, I was the man who was supposed to have the leadership role. I was the man who was supposed to set an example of what being a Jew is all about, and you're the one, the outsider, who set that standard. Okay, and then he tells her, he says, but just so you know, legally there is somebody who's closer than I am, and so we're going to offer it to him first. Okay, there's a go'el karov mimeni, literally somebody who's closer to me, and then he says, you know, stay here tonight and stay here tonight and then go home. And again, if you count up the number of times that the word go'el is used in this parak, because he says it right, if he imhu yachotz legoalech v'ga'altich chai Hashem, etc. I think I counted once, and I think it's like 9 times in this parak. So you've got the theme of teshuvah in Perek Aleph, the idea of physical and emotional return, and in Perek Gimel we have the idea of monetary and psychological and spiritual redemption. So the night passes, and then he sends her home, and this is very interesting. Vatavo al chamata, I'm in pasuk tetzayin. Vatavo al chamata vatomer. And she said, Mi at biti. Same thing that he says. Obviously, she knows who she is, but she's saying, who are you, in the sense of what is your identity now? But to God la et kol asher asala, and she said everything that the man did, and she says, Sheish haseorim ha'ila natani, and he gave me these sheaves. Thank you. And the Gemara says that this is basically, this was the betrothal, this was the tanaim, this was the giving, you know, basically saying, I'm giving you this gift. We're very careful with single men and single women not to give each other gifts, because in Masechet Kedushin, It says that even something as small as a date, okay? One date can be, if it's worth more than a pruta, which dates are expensive and they probably are worth more than a pruta, a date can be used as a wedding contract, okay? So be careful who you give fruit to. But Naomi gets this. She gets the fact that he is giving Ruth a betrothal gift. She gets the fact that she is now a different person, and it's like, okay, now we're going to sit and wait for what happens. And what happens in the next parak is again very much parallel to what happened with Yehuda, in that what happens next is done publicly. In other words, the confrontation between Tamar and Yehuda was private. I mean, the physical confrontation was private, but also the challenge to him was private, if we remember right. She sent it through a messenger, and this is all happening very, very, very quickly. And he has this moment of truth. Similarly here, he has this moment of truth. He accepts it, and then the declaration of loyalty is done publicly. And the way he does this is, I think, pretty ingenious, and also tells us a lot about what people's attitude were still at that time towards Moab. So now we're in Perek Dalet, and it's the next day, Act 4, Scene 1, and Boaz gathers people, right? This is going to be done publicly. He gathers people around, and he calls this guy named Ploni Almoni. Okay? And it's an interesting name because Ploni Almoni is the Jewish version of Joe Schmo. And the Gemara says, why is this person referred to as Joe Schmo? And again, it's an issue of identity, that when somebody assumes a position of making a positive change, they have a name. When the person basically falls short of their responsibility, they don't have a name. It's not a question of doing something bad or something good, but the question is are you the fullest you can be? If you are the fullest you can be, both l'tov u'l'ra, you get a name. If you are not the fullest that you can be, you don't. Which is interesting when we think about Bat Paro, right? We don't know what her name was. She's called Bat Paro. And if you take that concept to its logical conclusion, the question is did Bat Paro do everything that she could? In other words, if she was able to save one baby, would she have been able to save more babies? If Manoach's wife was able to receive one nevuah, did she have the potential to receive more? That's the idea behind this, that a name is your name is your identity, is your soul, is and then you have the responsibility to fulfill that. And that's why Naomi says, don't call me Naomi, I'm not Naomi anymore, I'm Mara, and that's, Boaz is named Boaz, he has strength in him, which he obviously fulfills. So he calls this Ploni Almoni, and he says, okay, look, and he does this in public. So we all know that Elimelech left, and Elimelech died, and Elimelech had sons, and the sons died, and now Elimelech has this field, right? He has this piece of property that has been, that his widow is not able to maintain. Do you want to buy it? And Ploni Almoni's first response is, sure, I'll buy it. I'll take responsibility. Okay? And then the next thing out of his mouth, and he says, well, you should know, though, that along with the field that you are inheriting, and it's very nice and very noble of you to be willing to take on the financial responsibility of the field, you are also taking that responsibility of the deceased's wife, who is this case, Ruth. Now, what this fundamentally is saying is that Ruth is being recognized as halachically bound to her husband. The only reason I'm not identifying who her husband is because I can never remember whether it's machlon or kilyon. Okay? So, and I don't want to make a mistake. So, there are halachic ramifications here, saying, okay, buy the field, you buy the field from the dead man, basically, but then you have a responsibility to take care of the dead man's family, who in this case is not only the dead man's mother, but is also the dead man's widow, which means that that widow is halachically the dead man's widow, which means that she is halachically Jewish, and not just, we're not just doing some random act of kindness to a stranger. This is halacha here. And what Ploni Almoni responds tells us why he's referred to who he is. And he says, and we are in Yud, is it? Right, Vav, sorry, okay, thank you. Okay, Vayomer Hagoel, okay? He's referred to here as Hagoel. He has the potential. Lo uchal lig'ol. Okay, I can't do it. Why? Pen ashchit et nachalati, lest I destroy my own nachala. Oxymoronic. I can't take on more lest I destroy what I have. Ge'al lach ata et ge'ulati. You should redeem my redemption. Ki lo uchal lig'ol. Okay, because I cannot redeem. In other words, if I take on this Moabiyah, it's going to look bad for me and my family. I can't do it. Lest, I'm not taking on this, and he doesn't identify her, he doesn't mention her by name, he doesn't say anything, it's all kind of in this euphemism, right? Boaz says, on that day you're going to take on Naomi, and you're going to take on Ruth, who's the deceased's wife, and he's like, nope, can't do it. And this is, in a way, the mirror image of what could have happened with Yehuda. Right, in that moment of truth where he had to decide, am I going to step forward, am I not going to step forward, am I going to reveal myself and take responsibility, or am I going to protect myself and my family, right? How many times it was like, oh, well, I would admit it, but what's going to happen to my family, and what's going to happen to my family? And that's exactly what he's doing. He's protecting his family's reputation. And he's like, I can't do this. I can't run the risk of taking this woman into my family and being associated with her, because it's going to ruin my name, and my children might not be able to get shidduchim, and maybe somebody's not going to want to do business with me, even though the shofet has said she's Jewish, she's legal, this is cool. And he says no. And it's very easy for us to sit here at this distance and make a judgment call on Ploni Almoni, but if we and I'm referring to myself here too, if we look at ourselves, like, how quick are we to take in that outsider? My husband, who's a rabbi and whose father was a rabbi, told me of more than one occasion where that he knew of somebody who was a convert, and yet that convert had a very, very hard time finding a shidduch, because who wants that convert in the family, right? We don't want those non-Jewish genes, which is pretty ironic, being that the convert, number one, the Torah says you can't be cruel to the convert, so far as you can't even remind that convert that he is converted. And where the Gemara says explicitly that a Baal Tshuva is on a level that even a Tzaddik Gamur isn't at. I mean, somebody who's, and we see she's the convert par excellence, and she's the mother of David HaMelech. Our attitudes are still our attitudes, and this is kind of a cautionary tale of saying, examine your own attitudes and examine your own judgments. And then Boaz comes along and he says, in the next pasuk, and he says, fine, okay? V'zot lifnim b'Yisrael, al ha'geula ve'al ha'timura, l'kayem kol divrei shalaf ish na'alo, v'natan l're'ehu, they take off their shoes, and then they spit in them, and all of that. Vayomer HaGoel LeBoaz. And again, this Goel doesn't have a name. Boaz does. Hinei lach. Knei lach. Ki kaniti et kol asher leElimelech ve'et kol asher lechilion b'machlon miyad Naomi. V'gam et Ruth HaMoabiyah eshet machlon. Thank you. There it is. Okay. Kaniti li leisha lahakim et hamet al nachlato v'lo yikaret shem hamet me'im echav u'mesha'ar mekomo edim atem hamet. The idea here again is that a person like Abraham was told to leave his, lech lecha me'artzecha mi'moladecha mi'beit avicha, and whereas Ruth left, and Boaz says, everybody knows this is what you left. This is also what you're coming back to. It's Shem HaMakom, it's Shem HaMaid. You are attached to your place, you are attached to your family, you are attached to your roots, and these are all kind of mirror images of one another. And then they marry. According to the Gemara, he was 80, which is why he says, you didn't go after any young boys. She gets pregnant, she has a child, and this child obviously goes on to become David HaMelech, who has his own problems with sexual behavior. And I don't remember where I read this, but there's a question that's asked. It's in, I think it's in one of the Hasidic texts, of why is it that the seeds of Mashiach are all coming out of these rather questionable liaisons? And the answer that's given is because everything grows from the dirt and everything moves towards the light. So that, the idea is that our personal growth, we start in the dirt. We start from a place that's low, that's potentially viewed as dirty, but it's also a place that nurtures. It's that same concept of the womb, right? The womb is something that's dark and something that's wet and something that has this kind of double entendre of being a place of beauty and purity, but also being a place that represents sexuality. But from that darkness, from that kind of ambiguous start, we enter into the world of light. Plants come out into the world of light, and it goes back to that idea that God and godliness and Torah, and that's all by He-or, that symbol of light. And with this, the story really comes full circle, right? Abraham and Lot permanently separated because one represented chesed and one represented selfishness. We have, they went, I kind of almost see it like, in one way, it's kind of this trapezoid, all right? So the trapezoid started here, or call it a triangle, I don't know, pick your shape, right? They're going this, and this, and then at some point, it's like things get about as far apart as they can get, and then slowly, they come back together again, and it's, pick your shape, you want to call it a circle, a galgal chozer, different parshanim like different shapes, and the Kabbalists like spirals, which isn't really a shape, but as I said, pick your shape. Round is a shape. I'm in shape, therefore. One of my favorite quotes. I'm in shape. Round is a shape. Thank you. So, but it's this idea that we're coming back. We're closing. We have all of these kind of ends that have been opened up in Bereshit that now, right before David HaMelech, right before Mashiach, right before the reunification of the tribes, right before we kind of get back from Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and then there's 12, and then they go all over the place, and they go to Mitzrayim, they go further all over the place, and now slowly but steadily that it's all coming back into one. And I guess so at the end of the day, what the Megillah represents and why it's so attached to Matan Torah and why it's attached to David and to Mashiach is the idea that redemption is always possible. There's never ever a point where things are permanent. As much as, this idea of preda, of separation, right, it's a permanent separation. It might be permanent in one lifetime, but there's no concept of permanence in Judaism. Nothing is forever except for Hashem. And that's something that can start in Bereshit, can come back together in the time of the Shoftim, and then something that is together for maybe 100, 150 years, and then slowly goes to pieces, and then we have the Horban, and then Bnei Yisrael come back, and then they, stick around, they kind of figure this out for another 500 years, and then we have another Horban, and then it's 2,000 years, right? And then there's another 1948, and then, appropriate Yom Yerushalayim, and then all of a sudden now we get Har HaBayit back, and it's like, our perspective, right, we live lives of 70, 80, 90 years, it's a fairly narrow perspective, but this is the perspective of infinity, which is what the Torah is, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, the end.
Thank you so much.
Any questions? Yes?
How did Boaz, after, decide, Moavi, below Moavi, and also, it seems like a little bit of a stretch from what we learned. And also, I wondered if she was a little bit less of a sympathetic character, would he have made that halachic change?
I think he made the halachic change because she was the sympathetic character, which to some, so the answer to your question is, had she been a typical Moaviyah, he wouldn't have made the change. But I think what she showed is that to some degree, men and women do have distinct characters, and can you hold women completely culpable for behavior that men clearly dictated? In other words, men dictate economics, and men dictate military policy, and what the women of Moab were accused of doing, to some degree, were and what Moab didn't share food and water, and the women of Moab were sent out to seduce the men. So these were areas, and religion certainly was in the hands of men. So it's this idea of, can you hold a group of people responsible for behavior that to some degree is not under their control? And halachically we have that concept also, right? That's the idea of the difference between murder and manslaughter, and the difference between manslaughter and an accident. So Boaz is really applying very appropriate Gemara logic, or Torah Shabbal Peh logic. If Ruth had been more typical, I'm sure we wouldn't have had a whole sefer about her.
Right, so he definitely stretched.
He stretched.
He definitely stretched.
And according to a very famous and unwritten midrash, this stretch was not accepted until David himself was anointed by Shmuel. That shows, yes, this was legit.
It was meant to be.
It was meant to, not only was it legit, but it was meant to be. But the midrash discusses how even Yishai himself he wasn't quite comfortable with his own lineage, and then he separates from his wife, and there's a whole other repeat of the story, but it takes a while for this to take hold.
What you just said about Ruth also applies to Naomi, that her husband's actions.
And that she's validated and vindicated, and in a way it's like, that expression, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, is that how do we know that what Tamar did with Yehuda was right, is that she got pregnant. Mm-hmm. It's like God giving his stamp of approval. Ruth got pregnant. David comes from Ruth. In other words, to some degree, it's what happens next that validates the process. And the fact that it gets written down and included for posterity.
Also, I don't know what this has anything to do with but would Machlon and Kelly have been people don't really feel like being a Goel for her, because, a trader is not such a sympathetic,
right.
I'm sure they had great land, but
he was willing to take Machlon and Kilyon's land. He wasn't willing to take, it was when the wife got mentioned, it was like, no, then I can't. His first impulse was like, fine, land, I can do land.
Probably a good piece of land too.
Yeah, nice piece of land, I can do that, but not wife. Okay?
Thank you. Wasn't the land kind of sitting there for a number of years between when they died and now?
Yeah.
So is it taking away from them that nobody initiated? Didn't they have this mitzvah, this opportunity much earlier, and neither of them took advantage? So,
yep. Which is kind of, it does not speak well, I mean,
Of either
that's what I'm
of them.
saying, that's why, you know, Aviva Zornberg and I had this long discussion about, she sees Boaz as the hero of the story. I don't know, he definitely has to be pushed, and that's under the best of circumstances. I think he kind of has an epiphany, and I think what he did was very intentional each step of the way, both his public rejection of them and his private acceptance, and then his public acceptance. You know, he also does tshuva. This is not only Naomi's tshuva,
His
it's
redemption.
Boaz's. It's his own redemption, yes.
Did Naomi tell Ruth the words to say that, I showed to change to get this, but did she tell her what to say? Was that
No,
Ruth's
she
own
says,
words?
she said, you know, he'll know what to do.
Mhm.
He doesn't, she doesn't put
So
words in
he'll,
her mouth.
he'll take the cue from
He'll take the
whatever,
cue,
yeah.
exactly, which is basically what, you know,
What happened,
what happened.
yeah.
She said, who are you? And she says, I am Ruth, to farasta kenafecha. And then she's like, yes, everything that you say I will do. Well, we don't hear what she says.
Right.
He clearly knows what she means.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
And on more than one.